IRAs and 401ks were initiated in the 1970s in the United States. The IRA was created in 1974, and the 401k was initially a plan for highly compensated employees and became an official retirement plan in the mid-70s. Now, this coincides with the demise or the decline of the U.S. pension system. It was a self-directed system for people who did not have access to pensions. 401ks and IRAs have since taken over the world of retirement planning and has become the default method of retirement planning for anybody probably younger than 70. Only 14% of Gen Xers and youngers have access to pensions. The rest of us will rely on 401ks and IRAs. Now, if you know anything about retirement planning, 401ks and IRAs are fundamentally different. The big difference is the amount of money that you can put into a 401k and IRA. It's also several magnitudes of order difference. This year for 2025, it is $7,000 for an IRA, and it is $23,500, I believe, for a 401k. That is a huge difference. And this number surprised me. I had to look it up, but about 40 or just north of 40% of Americans who are working do not have access to a 401k plan through their job. Maybe they're working part-time, maybe they're working in a company that just doesn't offer a 401k plan. Maybe the company is about to initiate a 401k plan. They just don't have access, and the only vehicle for retirement saving is an IRA. Now, this is problematic because there's a huge difference between $7,000 and $23,500. Even though only about 11% of Americans max out their 401k savings, you could save a lot more in a 401k over time, and often 401ks have matches, whereas IRA systems, it's completely self-directed and you do not have a match. When the person turns 50, you get a catch-up provision of over $7,000 in a 401k. You only get $1,000 as a catch-up provision with the IRA. So IRAs have their place, but typically for retirement savings, the 401k is the preferred method. When is the IRA the preferred method? Well, when you don't have access to a 401k. The IRA is basically the only game in town. If you need to roll money out of a 401k and want to have a self-directed account, the IRA is the best answer. Or they're more complicated answers, but I'm going to leave it pretty simple and just leave it at those two examples. The IRA does have a place in our retirement system, but it is in some ways subordinate to the 401k simply because you can't save as much money in the IRA as you can with the 401k. It's also the 401k is an ERISA-based account. That's very important, meaning if you are sued, if you are personally sued, if the money is in a 401k, it's excluded from that lawsuit because it's part of your retirement plan, but IRAs can be confiscated if you lose that lawsuit and they need to seize assets. For my clients who are involved in lawsuits regularly, think surgeons, think some lawyers, even think some form of wealth managers are frequently named in lawsuits. That may be an extremely important feature, and they may keep it in their retirement in a 401k indefinitely for that particular reason. But for the vast majority of Americans, opening an IRA usually is part of a rollover process from a 401k to an IRA, or it's part of a process where you're working for an employer that just doesn't have a retirement plan. What do the numbers look like in creating an IRA retirement completely with an IRA? Let's look at the numbers together. Okay, I'm at my computer and let's look at what a retirement savings account would look like if someone only has access to an IRA. Can you build a successful retirement? Yes, you can, but it's far less than what you could possibly create with a 401k. So I do have clients who are in this situation where they only have access to an IRA. And it's maddening. I really wish I could do more to help them save for the future, but they're capped at that $7,000 to $8,000 limit. There are ways that we get around that. If the person doesn't have access to the 401k, they're a high income earner, and we can't do like a SEP or a solo 401k, or none of those things work. There's something called a LIRP, and it's very rarely done because it's a very exotic plan and very complicated, but it's basically short for a life insurance retirement policy. Essentially, what we do is buy a variable life insurance policy for the individual, and we basically minimize the death benefit and maximize the contributions. And then at retirement, that person can borrow against the value of that life insurance policy and use that money and all the interest on that money for living expenses. The growth on that money is tax-free. It's considered a loan from the policy, and you have to be very careful because you can create something called a MEC, which is a modified endowment contract, which the IRS absolutely hates and will disallow the LIRP if you move into MEC territory. But essentially, it's an option for people who have consistently high income, who can't contribute to a 401k, who can't do a SEP, who can't do a solo 401k, and can't do any other form of retirement savings, but need to save a whole heck of a lot more than $7,000 a month to save for retirement. Another problem with LIRP is that they're very expensive and they're difficult to manage. But I do have a few clients who the LIRP is actually the best choice. And, we created LIRPs and monitor that carefully to make sure that they are saving towards their retirement goal. So let's look at this individual. Let's say, like most Americans, the average age that an American starts saving for retirement is 31. So we're going to start this person off at 31. They don't have access to a 401k. They're not eligible for a SEP or solo 401k. We're not going to do a LIRP because it's just too much money and time. They're just going to raw dog it with $7,000 a year towards retirement in a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. Something that you need to know is that typically the government raises the amount by $500 every few years. So I basically elevated the amount every 2 years. So either next year or the year after, it'll move to 7,500, then 8,000, then 8,500, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Roth or traditional, it depends on that person's income and set of circumstances, whether it's Roth or traditional. Of course, Roth, for the vast majority of people, is always the correct answer, but some people can't contribute to a Roth, so that leaves the traditional. But this person has just decided at age 31 they're going to start saving for retirement. It's going to be consistent, and they're going to save every single year until they retire in their 60s. Now, a word about the numbers on this. It's very rare that you get someone who's in this situation who can contribute the maximum IRA contribution every single year. I'm going to do another video about that because it maps to the more relatable experience to retirement savings in America. Typically, people have a few years of saving on, a few years of saving off, a few years on, a few years off, a few years of partial savings. They took a loan at one point and had to pay it back. They save, and they typically really hunker down after the age of 50 to save for retirement. So this scenario is a little bit unusual in that this person is pedal to the metal from age 31 and goes straight through. I'll do another video on what is a more common scenario in the American experience where people periodically save and periodically don't, to show those numbers. Okay, so let's look at this. I'm also assuming, based on the S&P 500 index, a 80-20 portfolio over a 30, I believe I did this 30-year period of time. We're going to start this person off with $7,000 in 2024, and they are going to max it out every single year that they can. Also at age 50, I'm going to throw in some extra money here. I bumped them up $1,000, so they'll get that extra catch-up contribution at age 50. So basically, they've gone pedal to the metal from 31 to 61. How much money will they have at retirement? Okay, I'm back. I had to stop the recording to answer a phone call, but I am back. And this is the big reveal of how much a person with a traditional or Roth IRA could save over time if they maxed out each and every year. So let's get into the numbers. So again, we start this person off at 31 with $7,000 a year. They're going to go 30 years straight. And I was pleasantly surprised how much money they could save. So the big reveal is by age 61, they should have about $1.2 million, which is a considerable amount of money. The tipping point, I keep talking about this tipping point where retirement savings really catch fire. It's about 600,000, and they hit that tipping point about 20 years in at age 50, 51, 52. It's a long, hard slog between 31 and 52. A lot of people often want to give up. A lot of people don't want to continue the journey. But you have to get to that 600,000 point for the magic to really begin happening and to speed run the next leg of the journey to 1 million and above. Now, I also want to point out, I didn't specify whether this was traditional IRA or whether this was Roth. I deliberately left it ambiguous. Typically, a person does not have all Roth money. It's typically a combination of traditional and Roth with probably a heavier tilt towards tradition. 1.2 million, especially in today's dollars, this is more than many Americans will ever see in their lifetime or in a retirement account. It's a considerable amount of money, but if you have to pay taxes on it, let's say this person did all traditional IRA, that puts a big bite in this 1.2 million, and the federal government and the state may end up with anywhere from 10% to 30% to 40% of this final figure of 1.2 million. Something you also have to consider, this spans a 30-year period of time from age 31 to age 61, where hopefully this individual is on the verge of retirement. Inflation. I didn't go in and calculate the year by year impact of inflation, but I'm assuming inflation is 3%. And for the value of the dollar, the purchasing power of the dollar to be cut in half, at 3% inflation, it takes about 25 years. 25 years. So if you look at this number, 1.2 million, when this person retires at 61, it will have, if the person started today, it would have roughly the same purchasing power as $600,000 today, which is not bad. It's not a bad thing. Again, that's much more money than the average American has saved for retirement. But it's a big decrease and a big difference between 1.2 million and $600,000. Now, like I said, it's more, 600,000 is still more than many Americans have for retirement. But if you also factor in that if all this money is in a traditional account, a good portion of it is going to end up in the federal or state government, it may not be as impressive as it may initially appear. And that's the power of inflation. And that is the power of only being able to save in today's dollars a maximum of $7,000 in a year. Now, can a person become a millionaire with only using an IRA, whether it's a Roth IRA or traditional IRA account? Yes. There's some very important caveats to this. This person has to start young. I started them at 31, which is the average age to start saving for retirement in the United States. If this person started at 41, or even if this person started at 5 years later at 36, the numbers probably would not add up to a million. So you have to start young, and you have to max out the savings each and every year, which is unusual. Very few people are this disciplined to be able to follow this course of actions. Typically what you see is that, okay, they contribute at 31, maybe they do a partial contribution at 32, they switch jobs and maybe they can only do, $500 at age 33, then they get a promotion and they get a second wind so they can max it out at 34. Then there's 2 years where they can't do it, then they take a loan, then they repay the loan, then they can't do, it's typically this back forth interplay between contribution and non-contribution years, which really add up to a diminished retirement. Because if you simply take 5 years out of this where you contribute zero,
you're coming in under 1 million. You take out 10 years and you're way under $1 million. So this plan of using a traditional or a Roth IRA also requires a lot of discipline. I also want to point out that people typically become really serious about retirement once they hit the age of 50. I think people get a sense of their own mortality at age 50, and they do realize they don't want to work forever and retirement is imminent. Also, that's the age where people tend to start getting whiffs of ageism. Sometimes it happens much earlier. My technology clients start feeling the ageism in their probably late 30s. Um, in other fields that are less ageist, people really start feeling the pressure around early 50s that their career may be shorter than they intended because they simply may be pushed out due to ageism. So people really start getting serious around age 50 and are willing to put the pedal to the metal and saving for retirement.
So there you have it. Yes, you can create a successful retirement for yourself using only a traditional or a Roth IRA. The exception with this is if you're a high income earner and you need more money, if you're not eligible for a SEP or a solo 401k or a 401k through your employer, you may want to talk to a financial advisor about a LIRP, life insurance and retirement policy. A LIRP is not a DIY project. You really do need a financial professional to work with you to design a LIRP because they are extremely complex and they are potential targets for IRS investigation if structured improperly. For those people out there, the 40-something% of Americans who are in our workforce who do not have access to a 401k through their employer, please don't let that stop you from creating your own retirement plan using the IRA individual retirement account. You can reach millionaire status with enough time and enough money using just an IRA. So there you have it. Tell me what you like, tell me what you don't like, and if you found this information useful, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.